Noted American philosopher Eric Hoffer once said, "Every good cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket." And boy, does it ever. And that could easily have been the tagline for conservative pundit Matt Walsh's hilarious skewering of the left's so-called Diversity Equity Inclusivity movement, or the anti-racism movement, if you will, in Am I a Racist? Well, are ya, punk? Well, folks, with 3 months left in the calendar year and with strong contenders like Late Night with the Devil, Cuckoo, and Longlegs, I'd say the award for 2024's most scariest film is quite clearly Justin Folk's Am I Racist? I mean, it's not even close. Mainstream film critics are clearly too terrified to even enter a theater to watch this documentary or even acknowledge its very existence. I mean, we're talking about a film currently in theaters, the 5th highest grossing film in America that has like 0 reviews from newspaper-affiliated critics, or at least any I've seen on Rotten Tomatoes anyway. It's like the evil monster from M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. In this case, it's the film we do not speak of. Because Nick Cage's insane, devil-worshipping serial killer in Longlegs can't be nearly as frightening as a film that might force you to actually reconsider some of your cherished beliefs and moral certitude that you will be on the right side of history. Or even scarier, singled out by the hysterical virtue-signaling mob for daring to see a film that challenges their core, rather racist beliefs. But more about this chill effect on the mainstream media later. Let's first actually take a look at the film itself. Now, I'm sure this comparison wouldn't please Walsh, but this has the stylistic feel of a Michael Moore documentary, with just a hint of Borat thrown in for good measure, except of course from the opposite end of the political spectrum, and without so many obvious lies. Or did you actually believe that whopper about Toronto residents leaving their homes unlocked at night?
People just didn't lock their doors.
So you don't lock your doors, but we Americans do. Why is that?
You must be afraid of your neighbor.
So, with some trepidation here, I sucked up my courage and visited my local Cineplex to see the film. And I have to say, for a film that had the promise of being more repellent than a Serbian film or any of the Human Centipedes, I actually laughed my ass off. Like, in a way I haven't in a very long time. Now, look, it's almost impossible to review a film like this without getting caught up in the political weeds, and I think you all know how loath I am to do that. Politician appoint an old family friend to investigate his alleged corruption. Was reaching for far exceeded his grasp, not unlike Justin Trudeau tackling simple math.
And the budget will balance itself.
That is spoiled by cunts burying his meat rod for all to snigger at. For those whose political leanings are center, left, center like myself, or all the way over to the hard right, you're probably going to enjoy this experience, as it no doubt confirms many of your misgivings about the left. And if you're on the end of the spectrum that champions the diversity, equity, inclusion crowd, well, you're probably just going to want to cover your ears and eyes, or better, just pretend the film doesn't exist altogether. We have a documentary here that sends Matt Walsh across the American landscape to speak with regular folks about their views on race in America, contrasting that with seminars and interviews with people in the so-called anti-racism movement who, ironically enough, maybe is just among some of the most racist folks you'll ever have the non-pleasure of hearing from. Honestly, one can't help but think you've fallen down the rabbit hole only to emerge in an Orwellian fantasy land replete with the Ministry of Truth, where truth is about as flexible as Madonna's collection of spring-loaded dildos. So, we get to hear from one DEI expert who throws her own 4-year-old daughter under the bus, claiming the girl's fondness for white Disney heroines is a clear sign of inherent racism. However, it is noted that if a white child were to gravitate to a character of color, like say Moana, and dress like her for Halloween, well then she'd be guilty of cultural appropriation, and you guessed it, a racist. Another fun sequence has a DI ladies' night out dinner where one of the obnoxious hosts confirms that she was in fact at one time a white person before announcing to all the ladies that Republicans, certainly across the land, are complete Nazis, and that if you're white, you absolutely must be lumped in with the absolute worst white racists you could ever hope to find. It's amazing what well-meaning white folks will shell out for the chance to be slandered and pissed on. Or a one-on-one session with another diversity, equity, inclusion expert who callously dismissed Dr. Martin Luther King's wish that we don't judge a man by his color, but by the content of his character. Yeah, according to her, Dr. King said a lot of things. There's also some great funny moments as well, like Walsh is posing as a DEI card-carrying expert and encouraging folks to sign his petition to change the name of the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument. Walsh even runs a fake anti-racism class where he'll encourage participants to flog themselves with a whip for their whiteness and to cuss out his elderly uncle who apparently committed the sin of telling an off-color Mexican joke decades earlier at the dinner table. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Walsh does indeed have interactions with regular folk, like the redneck Trump-loving bikers at a local dive bar, who don't appear to have a racist thought in their misshapen heads, or an elderly black man who apparently only feels love and appreciation for his country. And I'm not saying these people aren't legit, but in fairness, we don't know how many people he may have talked to before he found the answers he most certainly was looking for. But where the film really lands its punches cleanly are in the interviews with the shysters who spearhead this movement, and do so collecting some pretty hefty speaking fees. Now, there's no tricks of editing here or taking words out of context. Walsh understands that with these folks, words are like lengths on a rope. A few innocent prompts here and there, and before you know it, they've fashioned their own noose. And all of this comes to a head when Walsh, for no less a fee than $15,000, manages to finagle his way into an interview with the high priestess of anti-racism herself, Robin DiAngelo. Now, you may know DiAngelo is the writer of the best-selling screed White Fragility, a book that implores white people to feel shitty about themselves for being white, while also being completely condescending to black people as if they were helpless half-wits. After listening to Miss DiAngelo babble on about what shits all white people are, we get to see her awkwardly rummage her purse for reparation money, about $30 to be given the Walsh's black producer. Believe me, the sequence is just worth the price of admission alone. Really funny stuff. But if Walsh and folk only set out to skewer and humiliate the DEI crowd, I would say job well done. But whether by intention or not, I'd say this film has also very much exposed something else in the world of mainstream film criticism. Actually, two things, neither of which are really a surprise, I suppose. The first is there's just a shitload of film critics or people masquerading as critics who can't help but smuggle in one banal pearl of woke ideology after another into their reviews. Now, you've surely read these people before. The review appears to be fairly run-of-the-mill, until out of nowhere we got laments about the film's whiteness or maleness or not enough minorities to satisfy the Academy's race quota. These people couldn't be dragged into this film. I mean, who likes to have their cherished belief systems mocked and skewered? Well, that might dangerously make you reevaluate who you are as a person. And then there's the critics with no real strident political agenda, but are just scared shitless. And who could blame them? We've all seen the witch hunts completely end people's careers for even the slightest of transgressions, or no transgression at all. Just a simple comment or joke that got taken so out of context and cynically warped into some darker meaning, so the mob would have some fresh meat to pounce on. Hell, even many YouTube reviewers with not nearly as much to lose can be found equivocating and laying the dishonest groundwork in fear of the potential blowback to come. I mean, I knew nothing about this film at all. What was it about? Who's Matt Walsh? I just kind of fell out of my car and rolled quite innocently through the theater lobby and into this film. Was I not supposed to go to this film? It's like the waning days of the French Revolution. Oh, sure, early on the heads that ruled surely deserved it. But the bloodlust continued, and the guillotine was thirsting for more and more. And before you knew it, all it took was a suspicion or unfounded claim to find yourself on death row. No one was safe, especially the innocent. And think about that. Just how much of the moral high ground could your ideology possibly stake out when you need to spread your ideas through fear? Am I a Racist is currently playing in your local theater and gets an acid test rating of very funny shit. That is all.